They executed a pregnant woman for a crime she didn't commit. What happened next shocks the world. Imagine watching an innocent woman, 8 months pregnant, led to her death while screaming that she was betrayed by the very people she loved most. That's exactly what happened to Rachel Monroe, and the shocking truth about who framed her will leave you in tears. This isn't just a story of a crime. It's a story of betrayal, injustice, and a final twist so powerful you won't believe it until the very end. Because what happened after Rachel's last breath didn't just expose the liars who destroyed her. It shook the entire world and changed lives forever. So stay with me until the end of Rachel's story, because the final moment will break your heart and leave you stunned. Inside the concrete walls of a Georgia prison, Rachel sat alone, her hands trembling as they wrapped around her unborn child. 8 months along, she whispered promises into the silence. "I'll protect you. I'll keep you safe." She didn't yet know those words would become her last vow. The city outside buzzed with life. Honking cars, bright lights, restaurants filled with laughter. While Rachel's name flashed across news tickers, pregnant woman charged in finance fraud scandal. But Rachel was no criminal. She was a victim of the cruelest betrayal imaginable, one that would soon push her toward the unthinkable. And when the truth finally came out, after it was far too late, the entire world gasped. Before the world branded her a criminal, Rachel Monroe was simply a woman trying to build a better life. At just 29 years old, she lived in a modest apartment on the south side of Atlanta. She worked long hours as an office manager for a financial firm downtown, often skipping lunches to save money for the baby on the way. She wasn't rich, but she had hope, and hope was everything. Her fiancé, Daniel Carter, was charming, ambitious, and always dressed sharp. He told Rachel he wanted to be the father she and their child deserved. He'd stroke her belly and whisper, "Our little one is going to have everything I never had." Rachel believed him. Why wouldn't she? Daniel had a good job, friends in the right places, and a smile that could win anyone over. But what Rachel didn't see was the restlessness in Daniel's eyes, the way his phone lit up late at night, or how often he disappeared with excuses that didn't add up. He wasn't just ambitious, he was desperate. And desperate men make dangerous choices. Rachel's only family nearby was her younger brother, Michael, a delivery driver who worked nights but always made time to check on her. "You look tired, sis," he'd tell her, dropping off groceries after a long shift. He didn't trust Daniel, though he kept his suspicions quiet for her sake. As Rachel decorated the baby's room with soft blankets and pastel colors, she had no idea the storm brewing around her. Because behind the loving smiles and promises, Daniel was already pulling strings that would put her name in the headlines and her life in jeopardy. And when his betrayal came to light, it wouldn't just ruin Rachel. It would kill her. The offices of Carter and Wells Financial Group gleamed with glass walls, polished floors, and the constant hum of ambition. Rachel worked there quietly, diligently, never drawing attention to herself. She handled client files, updated spreadsheets, and kept the company running smoothly behind the scenes. Daniel, however, had bigger plans. He wasn't content with his modest salary or his middle manager status. He wanted fast money, influence, and the kind of lifestyle he saw plastered across social media feeds. Luxury cars, expensive watches, first-class vacations, and he was willing to do anything to get them. One evening, as Rachel sat at her desk organizing payroll files, Daniel appeared at her side with his usual charming grin. "Hey babe, you almost done? Let's grab dinner." She smiled, exhausted but eager to go home. She didn't notice the way his eyes darted to her computer screen, or how he had already memorized her login password. That night, after Rachel had gone to bed, Daniel sat in the living room with his laptop open. He logged into her work account, moving large sums of money from client accounts into an offshore holding. Every transfer, every digital fingerprint, was traced back to Rachel. He set her up perfectly. To the outside world, Rachel was the only one with access. To investigators, it would look like she had been funneling money to herself. Daniel leaned back in his chair, whispering, "Sorry, babe, but this is the only way." Days later, Rachel's world collapsed. Her boss called her into the office, face pale with fury. "Rachel, over $500,000 is missing, and all the evidence points to you." Rachel's jaw dropped. "That's impossible. I would never." But it was too late. The trap had been sprung. It was a Tuesday morning when the knock came at Rachel's apartment door. She was still in her robe, sipping tea, when she opened it to see two uniformed officers standing stone-faced. "Rachel Monroe?" one asked. "Yes," she answered nervously, her hand instinctively resting on her pregnant belly. "You're under arrest for financial fraud and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." Rachel's mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. "What? No, no, there must be a mistake. I didn't do anything." Her voice cracked, her eyes wide with disbelief. The neighbors peered from their doors and windows as the officers handcuffed her in front of everyone. Cameras seemed to appear out of thin air. A reporter shouted from across the street, "Pregnant woman accused of stealing millions. Rachel Monroe. What do you have to say for yourself?" Rachel's heart raced, tears streaming down her face as microphones were shoved toward her. She felt like an animal being dragged to slaughter. "I didn't do this," she cried. "Please, believe me, I'm innocent." But the headlines wrote themselves. Within hours, her face was plastered on every news channel. 8 months pregnant office manager caught in embezzlement scandal. Greed over motherhood? Atlanta woman faces years in prison. Daniel stood by her side at first, arms crossed, face carefully composed for the cameras. "It's a misunderstanding," he told reporters, playing the role of the supportive fiancé. But inside, his stomach twisted, not with guilt, but with fear that someone might dig too deep and find the truth. Rachel's brother Michael rushed to the courthouse when he heard the news. "Rachel, talk to me, what's going on?" Her voice broke. "I don't know, Michael. I swear on my life, I didn't take a thing." But the world had already judged her. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Rachel Monroe was led in, her orange jumpsuit stretched over her pregnant belly. She tried to hold her head high, but every eye in the room was on her, judging, condemning, doubting. The prosecutor, Linda Hayes, wasted no time painting Rachel as a greedy mastermind. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this woman stole over $500,000 while hiding behind the image of a soon-to-be mother. She used her position of trust to rob hard-working families blind." Rachel's lawyer, David Lawson, stood and shook his head. "Rachel Monroe has no history of theft, no criminal record, and no motive. She lived modestly, paycheck to paycheck. This case doesn't add up, and the so-called evidence will show that." But the evidence Daniel planted was airtight. Bank transfers traced directly to Rachel's login. Emails supposedly sent from her account authorizing suspicious transactions. Every digital footprint pointed to her. Rachel sat in silence, her chest tight, her hands gripping the table. She wanted to scream that she'd been framed, that Daniel, the man sitting stone-faced in the gallery, was the one behind it all. But how could she prove it? She had no documents, no recordings, no one who could back her up. The jury glanced at her swollen belly, and instead of compassion, some shook their heads in disgust. How could a pregnant woman do something like this? Michael sat behind her, clenching his fists. He knew his sister. She couldn't even cheat on a board game, let alone steal millions. But the tide of public opinion was already against her. When the judge's gavel finally struck, Rachel felt the ground fall from under her. The trial wasn't about truth anymore. It was about destruction. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Robert Whitman shuffled the papers in front of him. Rachel's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. 8 months pregnant, hands trembling, she gripped the table for strength. "Rachel Monroe," the judge began, his voice steady but cold. "This court finds you guilty of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." Rachel gasped. "No, please, I didn't do this." Her voice cracked, echoing through the chamber. Tears streamed down her face as she looked desperately at the jury, searching for even one sympathetic glance. None came. Judge Whitman adjusted his glasses. "Given the scale of the crime and the apparent breach of trust, the state sentences you to execution." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Rachel's knees buckled. "Execution? I'm pregnant. Please, I'm innocent. My baby." Her cries pierced the silence, but the judge slammed his gavel. "The sentence is final." Rachel's lawyer, David, leapt to his feet. "Your Honor, she's carrying a child. At the very least." "Order in the court," the judge roared. This woman used her pregnancy as a shield for her crimes. Sentence to be carried out immediately following medical clearance. Rachel collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Michael rushed forward, restrained by guards as he shouted, "She didn't do it. You're killing an innocent woman and her baby." In the gallery, Daniel pressed his lips together, fighting to keep his mask of concern. But inside, a dark thrill coursed through him. It had worked. Every lie, every forged transfer, every step of his betrayal had landed perfectly. Rachel would pay the price for his sins, and he would walk away untouched. Or so he thought. The prison walls were cold and merciless, but what cut Rachel deepest was the ticking clock. Each day she woke up knowing she was one step closer to death, one step closer to leaving her unborn child behind. She sat on the edge of her cot, hands on her belly, whispering, "Hold on, baby. Mama's here. I won't give up." But her voice cracked with each word. No matter how many times she said it, she couldn't shake the truth. She was running out of time. Her brother Michael visited every chance he got, his eyes red from sleepless nights. "Rachel, I'm talking to lawyers. I'm talking to reporters. Someone has to believe you. I won't stop until I clear your name." Rachel squeezed his hand through the glass. "Promise me, Michael. If they go through with this, promise me you'll protect my baby's name. Promise me the world will know I didn't do this." "I promise," Michael said, his voice breaking. "I swear it." Meanwhile, Daniel's visits were a performance for the cameras. He sat across from Rachel with crocodile tears in his eyes. "I don't know how this happened, Rach. I'm doing everything I can." His voice was soft, practiced. Rachel searched his face for truth, but her heart ached with doubt. Something about him felt wrong, his comfort too rehearsed. "Daniel," she whispered, "if you know something, if you had anything to do with this." He cut her off sharply. Don't say things you'll regret." His eyes hardened for a split second before softening again for the guards. Rachel leaned back, realization dawning. She didn't want to believe it, but deep inside, she knew Daniel was hiding something, and the world would soon know it too. The day arrived with gray skies hanging heavy over Atlanta. Outside the prison, protesters gathered, some demanding justice, others holding signs that read, "Save the baby," and "Stop the execution." The air was thick with tension, sirens blaring in the distance, news vans lined up with cameras ready. Inside, Rachel Monroe was led down the hallway in shackles. Her swollen belly made every step a struggle, but she held her head high, tears glistening in her eyes. The guards avoided looking at her. Even they knew what was about to happen was wrong. As she entered the chamber, she whispered a prayer under her breath. "God, protect my child. Let the truth come out." Michael pounded on the glass, shouting, "She's innocent. You're killing her and her baby. Stop this madness." His cries were drowned out by the judge's order being read. Rachel was strapped into the chair, her hands shaking violently. She looked out through the window, locking eyes with her brother. "I love you, Michael," she mouthed. Then she lowered her gaze to her belly. "I love you, baby. Forgive me." Daniel stood among the witnesses, his face carefully blank. To anyone watching, he was the grieving fiancé. But in that fleeting moment when Rachel's eyes met his, she saw it. The flicker of guilt, the shadow of the man who had betrayed her. The executioner stepped forward. The room held its breath. Rachel closed her eyes. One last tear rolled down her cheek as the world went silent. And with a final gasp, both mother and child were gone. But what happened next, what came after her death, would shake the entire world to its core. It was 2 weeks after Rachel's execution when the first crack appeared in Daniel Carter's carefully built lie. A young IT intern at Carter & Wells, Ethan Parker, had been quietly reviewing archived server logs for a routine audit. What he found froze him in place. Remote logins from Daniel's personal laptop, accessing Rachel's account at times when she was physically logged out. Buried deep in the files were drafts of forged emails only Daniel could have written. Ethan's hands shook as he copied the evidence onto a flash drive. Within hours, he delivered it to a local journalist, Clara Hughes, who had covered Rachel's trial but never believed the story made sense. Clara ran with it. Within 24 hours, national news outlets picked it up. New evidence proves pregnant woman executed was innocent. Daniel Carter linked to million-dollar fraud scandal. The story went viral. Social media erupted in outrage. Millions watched Rachel's tear-stained face in her last moments, now with the horrifying knowledge that she had been innocent all along. Hashtags like #JusticeForRachel and hashtag #HerBaby2 trended worldwide. Michael stood before cameras, voice trembling with grief and fury. They killed my sister, they killed her child, and they let the real criminal walk free. The system failed her, and it failed us all. Meanwhile, Daniel's world collapsed. Paparazzi hounded him, protesters gathered outside his home, and federal agents closed in with warrants. His once polished smile was replaced by panic as he was dragged away in handcuffs, shouting excuses no one believed. Rachel's face, once splashed across tabloids as a thief, was now on every screen as a martyr of injustice. And the truth that came out after her death didn't just shock the world, it enraged it. Months after the truth came out, Atlanta built a memorial at the very courthouse where Rachel Monroe had been condemned. A bronze statue stood tall, a young mother holding her belly, head lifted high, a symbol of resilience and innocence stolen too soon. Flowers covered the steps daily. Strangers knelt to pray. Parents brought their children to learn her story, and the world whispered her name with reverence, Rachel. Her brother Michael fought tirelessly to make sure her death wasn't in vain. He partnered with advocacy groups, pushing for laws that protected the rights of pregnant women in custody and reforms to prevent wrongful convictions. Each time he spoke on live television, his voice shook with emotion but never with doubt. They silenced my sister, but they cannot silence the truth. Rachel's story will save lives. Across the country, thousands of women reached out, sharing their own stories of betrayal, abuse, and injustice. Rachel had become more than a victim. She was a movement. Daniel Carter, once a man of charm and ambition, now sat behind the same kind of bars he had condemned Rachel to. Convicted of fraud, perjury, and conspiracy, he faced a lifetime to reflect on the woman he destroyed. And no amount of wealth or charm could save him from the shame that followed his name. But Rachel's story didn't end with her death, or even with Daniel's downfall. It lived on in every protest sign, every courtroom reform, every child taught to stand against injustice. Her final words, whispered to her unborn baby, echoed in the hearts of millions. I love you. Forgive me. The world would never forget Rachel Monroe, and her legacy, born of tragedy, would change the course of history forever.